setting up an emulator with the full range of Amiga models can be a bit difficult. So, what if you could get a package to do it all for you? Let's have a go with Amiga Forever. Hi and welcome to Bytes and Bits. The Commodore Amiga was one of the last independently designed home computers before the market was really swamped by the IBM PC and its compatibles. So it was first launched in 1985 and it was initially marketed as a business machine. But its revolutionary graphics and sound capabilities, teamed with its complete lack of success in the business computing arena, soon saw it morphing into a top-end gaming system, with success in the video and sound industries as well. Now, over the Amiga's 10-year production run, there were numerous models and specifications designed to capture various segments of the computing marketplace, ranging from reduced-priced home computers to high-spec business and video production models. So fast forward to today, and the Amiga still has a big following due to its vast software catalogue. So in this video, I'm going to show you what has to be the easiest way to emulate the full range of Amiga models on your PC. So let's find out if the Amiga really does make it possible. Now, there are a number of ways to emulate the Commodore Amiga, from traditional machine emulation through to fully modernised Amiga operating systems that will run on your PC hardware. But for the true ease of use and setup, you can't beat the package offered by the official copyright owner of the Amiga operating system code, and they're called Cloanto. Now, their Amiga Forever packages give you everything you need to get a complete, and uniquely within the emulation world, a fully licensed version of this great machine running on your PC. Now, the package which they use is based on the WinUAE emulator, but during the installation, everything is actually set up for you. All versions of the Amiga OS are included, along with Workbench, and even some Amiga games and software titles. Now, setting up all of this to emulate the various Amiga models can be tedious and confusing, which is why I feel that this actually is the best option if you just want to get up and running as easily as possible with everything set up properly for you. So let's see how you get it up and running. So first off, the bad news. Amiga Forever is not a free application. So the WinUAE software that it's built on is free, and you can install that and set it up yourself if you prefer. But you will need to find the official ROM dumps and connect it all up yourself. Now, I did actually make a video on that a while back where I did suggest actually buying the Amiga Forever package just to get hold of the officially licensed ROMs, and that then of course lets you set it all up. But in this video then, we're going to use this Amiga Forever package just to get everything installed. So first of all then, you need to head over to the Amiga Forever website at amigaforever.com, and here you'll find lots of information about the project, along with information about the 3 versions on offer. Now if you're watching this video on or before the 31st of July 2025, then don't click any of the buy links. There's a special version 11 launch offer link in the video description to get 50% off any of these Amiga Plus packages, and that will come together with an included Commodore 64 Forever license. So make sure that you use those links if again, as I say, you are buying within that offer period. But if we go back to the normal website then, so if you're buying this after the 31st of July, then these are the options that you will have. So the value package then gives you a basic setup with the most compatible ROM and Workbench versions, along with a small set of games and applications. So if you're just dabbling with the Amiga, well then this will get you set up and running. I would, however, ask you to have a look at the Plus Edition. So this gives you everything you need to emulate the full Amiga range, from the very first machine to the very last machine, with all of the software versions in between. Now, it is a bit more expensive, but it will give you this complete setup. There is also then this premium version, which gives you an actual physical box full of discs and goodies, but it is effectively the same emulation package as the Plus version. Now, whichever one you choose, as you go through the payment system, you will eventually then get a download link emailed out to you. They do inspect your purchase first and make sure it's verified, and then they'll usually get this download link back out to you within a few hours. Now, once you get that link and click on it, on the download page then, you'll get a download link for a .msi installer file and also a DVD ISO image, again, if you've purchased the Plus edition. So once you've got the installer package downloaded, we're ready to start. So installation really is as simple as opening up that downloaded .msi installation file. And this will then guide you through the installation process and basically then do all of the work for you. So just follow the instructions, work your way through it, install it somewhere onto your hard drive, and that then should be the application ready to go. So you should now have a pretty little yellow flower icon on your desktop. So if you double click on that, that will open up the application and you'll see the main launcher and Explorer window. So that's pretty much everything set up and ready to go. Now in this Explorer window, I obviously have the Amiga Forever system and the Commodore 64 Forever system. So I do have these two sets of options here. And just while we're here, the Commodore 64 is actually a really good system as well. If I come into the systems folder, you can see that it has pretty much got the Vice emulator. So again, it's based on the Vice emulator, but it has that set up in different configurations for pretty much every single 8-bit Commodore machine that there was. And again, all of these have got the correct ROMs, so basic ROMs and everything all set up and ready to work. So a very, very good system as well. But if we go back to our Amiga then, if we come into the systems folder for that, you can see there that we have pretty much all of our Amiga models, both old and some of the new ones set up and ready to go. So these are basically setting up WinUAE, loading it with the correct hardware configuration, the correct software versions and configurations, and then Workbench as well. So really, that gives us easy access to boot up any model of Amiga that we want to. So we can come in here. So let's have a look at the Amiga 500. So if I double click on that, that is now booting up the emulator. It has loaded that emulator with the correct hardware configuration. It's connected in the correct Amiga OS ROMs and Workbench floppy disk, and that's already been put into the drive. And you can see that the Amiga is actually booting up into Workbench at the moment. So if I move my mouse around, I'm not getting any mouse response at the moment, and that's because it's obviously booting up and it has integrated my mouse with the emulator. So if I want to get back my Windows mouse, I just need to hold down the escape key on my keyboard for about a second or so, and there you can see we now have my Windows mouse back again. If I want to go back into the Amiga and get the mouse working in there, I simply click in the emulation window and I now have my Amiga mouse all set up and ready. So while it's booting up, let's have a look at some of the options on this emulator. So I'm just going to use escape again to get my Windows mouse back. So at the top here we have some emulator controls. So again, we can pause the emulation, we can stop the emulation, we can reset the machine, take snapshots, and so on. Over the end here we have a full screen option, which lets us in effect come out of our windowed mode to full screen mode, and we'll have a look at that in a second. Down the bottom are some of our actual sort of hardware setup. So let me just move this up here a bit so we can see what's happening down the bottom here. So again, I can hover over this one and it shows me there which model of Amiga I'm working with. So I'm using an Amiga 500 on Amiga OS 1.2 on a 68,000 CPU and so on. I can of course look at my keyboard setup. So at the moment that's obviously connected to my Windows keyboard. And it's telling me here some of the sort of specialist Amiga keys down the bottom. Same with my mouse. So my mouse at the moment is plugged into port 1 on the Amiga. So if I click on that, you can see here that it's got port 1 is emulating my mouse, and that's connected to my Windows mouse. Port 2 then at the moment is empty, but I can if I want. So I've got an Xbox controller plugged into my PC. So I can say on my emulated port 2, I want that to be connected to a gamepad. And the gamepad that I want to connect it to is my Xbox controller. We then have our disk drive control here. So at the moment you can see in floppy drive 0, so DF0, I have Workbench 1.3 floppy disk plugged in there. But of course, if I click on that, I can go off and insert a different disk image, or even insert a blank disk if I wanted to make some saves and so on. We also have printer support in this new version of Amiga Forever. So again, that lets us connect up a printer and use that then with our Amiga. So let me just bring this all back down again so we can see everything. So that pretty much now is us set up here with our Amiga 500. So if I come back into the emulator here, so again, I can come in the disk drive. So this is my floppy disk here. I can of course open that up, and this will be exactly as it would be on a real Commodore Amiga. So I can go into my utilities folder. And inside there, of course, we have a number of utilities, and I could then start up my clock utility, and that then, of course, just operates just as it ever would in any sort of Amiga. So let's jump into full screen mode so we can see what's going on in there. So if I come out of here and get my Windows mouse cursor back, I can click on the full screen mode, and that should then jump me into full screen. So in full screen mode, we obviously lose the Windows decorations, so that our menu bars at the top and bottom have disappeared. So again, the way of getting those back and getting back your Windows mouse is to just simply hold down the escape key again for a second. So if you just click the escape key, that registers as an escape key press within the Amiga. If you hold the escape key down, that registers as you wanting to come back out and gain control through Windows. So again, you can see now I have my Windows cursor here, and I can access all of my menu buttons and so on to sort of adjust how the sort of PC devices are emulated and so on. And again, I can switch between sort of full screen and windowed mode through this top right hand icon here, or I can go back into my emulation just with this back button. So in my emulation here, you can see we now have our full screen view of our Amiga desktop. The WinUAU emulator obviously allows us to make this look a bit more realistic. So at the moment you can see here that it is very sharp LCD image quality where all of our pixels are very, very sharply defined. And of course, that's not really what it looked like on our main machine. So if we come out of this full screen mode, and if I jump back down into my Amiga Forever itself, so if I go to my tools and my options in here, you can see that there are a whole range of options that we can use to set up our emulator just exactly as we want it. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll leave that to you to sort of go through and just have a bit of a play around. But to get it making a little bit more realistic, if we go into our emulation here, you can see that we can apply some video filters. So I'm going to put in some scan lines on mine. Again, there's lots of other things you can play about within here. We can go in and we can do our original pixel ratios and so on. So let's see how that looks then on our main screen. So if I come out of that, if I come then back into my Amiga screen and go back up to full screen mode, you can see now that we have what looks a lot more like it would do if we were working on some sort of CRT-based monitor where our pixels are a little bit less defined. We've got our scan lines coming in here. And again, you can start to play around with this to your heart's content just to get it looking exactly as you want it. So that is booting up into a machine. Now, obviously, a lot of what we want to do is to actually boot up into some games. So let's have a look at that next. So the Amiga Forever package gives you everything you need to emulate the machine in terms of sort of hardware, firmware and operating systems. But it does come with a small selection of games, but usually you're going to want to find your own. So most of the big titles you will have to find elsewhere. So if you go to the Amiga Forever website, it does actually give you some hints as to where to go and where to find these. So there is a link on the main homepage here for downloading games. Again, that will take you off. It will talk you through the ideas of what types of games you're going to find, what sort of formats are going to be in, and so on, with some links off to get hold of those. Now, obviously there are better websites which will give you some sort of more downloads, but again, I'll have to leave you to find those yourself on the web. Now, the files that you find, if you go at the bottom of this downloading page, there is a Using Amiga Floppy Disk Images help file here. So if you click on that will take you through and talk you through the different formats that you might find outside there. So basically, RP9 file formats are one that is sort of dedicated to the Amiga Forever format. So they have their own little version which will it packages everything up for you and just makes everything work smoothly. ADF files tend to be the actual floppy disk images. And again, that is again formatted for use inside these emulators. And again, you can see there's lots of other different formats down here. One good thing about Amiga Forever is that it is set up to correctly handle pretty much any file format for Amiga games that you might come across. So say ADF is a common format. You might find LHA file disks and WHD load disks. And again, getting all of those set up inside WinUAE by yourself manually can be a bit difficult. Amiga Forever just basically handles it all for you. So you simply throw the file at it and it will sort of work out how to turn the computer on and emulate it for you. So again, another big advantage of doing that. So let's assume that we have downloaded some games, and let's see how we actually get them to play. So I've downloaded a few games here in a few different file formats, just so we can see how each of those works. So the first one I'm going to have a look at then is Alien Breed. So that has been downloaded as .adf files. So these are direct dumps of the actual game disks. And you can see this is a 2-disc game here, so we can see how we handle that. So let's see if we can get that up and running. So back over to Amiga Forever, if I go to my file menu and play, we should be able to find our disk. And of course, we want to play disk 1 first. So once we do that, Amiga Forever is really good at being able to help us get these things working. So it's looked at the file names and it's saying that I don't have an exact match for what that game is, but can you please tell me which game it is? So you can see here it's coming up with Alien Breed Special Edition 92, which is actually the game that we want. So what it's going to do here is it's got a database of how these games work best, and that will help it then set it up for us. So I'm going to say that that's the game it actually is. So I'm going to select that, and that should now go off and tell us what we need to do. So it's coming back here. So what it's going to do, it's going to create its own RP9 file, and that is the Amiga Forever's sort of way of packaging up the game to make sure that it starts with the right machine, the right OS ROMs, and so on. So you can see here that it has come down and it's selected an Amiga 500 running Amiga OS 1.2 and so on. So let's accept that and see if that game comes up and running. So this has dropped us into a full screen mode, and you can see here we have the machine booting up. So there we have our hack splash screen. So if I just click the mouse button, that should start taking us into the actual game itself. And here we have it coming up. So while we're getting this set up here, we can check what we have connected to our Amiga. So if I press the escape button and hold it down, we can see down here then that brings us back up our menus. So really want to make sure that we have our mouse connected. So port 1 is our mouse, and then we have a joystick. So port 2 is connected to our game controller. So just make sure that's all okay. So port 2 is a joystick, and the PC device is my Xbox controller. So that's all set up and working. So let's go back to our game, and let's just see if we can get through these screens. So that's through all the advertising, and here we are starting to load up the actual game itself.
Insert disk 2.
So disk 1's now been loaded, and of course the game is now asking us to insert disk 2 into our drive 0. So again, we need to come out of the emulation using our escape key. And all we need to do now is to go down to our disk drive system, and we want to insert a disk image file. And of course we now want to insert disk 2. So let's just insert disk 2. And then we're going to press fire on our controller. So it's now read in disk 2, and there we are, ready to play our game. So if I start the game, our screen at the moment looks a little bit off. It's a very small letterbox in the center of the screen there. So let's just make sure that we can see that a bit better. So again, I'm going to come out of my emulation with the escape key. I'm going to take it down to windowed mode. Okay, so we can see there windowed mode in that. But that lets me then get access to my options button. So I go to tools and my options. So we'll just come into our emulation here. So we've got our video filter, our aspect, we've got a square aspect ratio there. So let's just see if that's all set up. And again, we're preserving our scaling. So let's OK that. So if I come back to our game itself, so we can see now that the setup itself had obviously tweaked a few values, but what we've done now is we've gone in there and we've overridden those. So we've now got a much better layout for our screen. So if we go back to our full screen mode, we should now find that our game is in a much better setup. And we can now go off and obviously start playing our game itself. So that is our Alien Breed up and running. That was a 2-disc game. So we've seen there that we can get our Amiga Forever to help us set up the correct machine and the correct operating systems and so on. We've now seen that it can launch the game, but we're able to tweak then the game itself settings by coming out of the emulation into our options. And we've seen now how we can play multi-disc games. So whenever it asks for our second or third or whatever disc, we can simply go down to our disk image and load a new one into our disk drive. And that's just exactly the same as if we had popped out the disk, popped in the second one, and gone ahead with that. So that's Alien Breed all up and running. And the good thing about Amiga Forever is once we make those changes to the settings and so on, it will actually remember those. So if I come out of this game totally now, so again escape, and we're actually going to stop the emulation. So if I go into my file manager, you can see that it has now created an RP9 file that sits in with these game disks themselves. So next time round, what I can do is I can actually run that file, and that will then be aware of all of these other disks and the settings needed to run that. So that's Alien Breed. So let's try the next one then. So if I come back out to here, and if I come down to Xenon 2 Mega Blast, so that is a .lha file. So let's boot that up and see if we can get that going. So back to Amiga Forever, and again go to our File menu and Play. This time we're going to come back out here and we're going to load in that LHA disk. Now LHA files are a sort of archive file, and what generally happens here is there's a system called WHD load, which sort of tries to turn the floppy disks for the Amiga into sort of little mini hard drives. So the idea here is that it packages up the floppy disks, and there could be multiple floppy disks for a game, and it packages them up into an archive, which is then mounted as a hard drive with the emulator. So that sort of makes everything sort of speed up a lot more. It also means that the need for swapping disks can be removed. So it just really makes everything run almost like it's more like a console game rather than having floppy disks. So if we start up this one, let's see what happens. So again, it's coming now with our selector, and it's come here and it's saying that this is going to be loaded through WHD load, which is sort of like a slightly separate way of loading in the games. And again, it's produced a configuration here depending on various sort of processors and so on. So let's just go with the default settings and see what happens. So you can see now that the Xenon 2 is being loaded up, and it's going through this WHD load system, and that will then sort of, as I said, it sort of loads it as a hard drive. So we have a bit of an intro sequence here going, so let me just skip us past this. And there we are into Xenon 2 Mega Blast. And as you saw, it sort of went through the whole process there. We didn't have to sort of wait so long for the various discs to be inserted, and we are straight now into the actual game itself. So that's our LHA and WHD load games working okay. So there's one last one I want to take you through, which is loading in a game where it doesn't actually work and seeing how we can fix that. So we're back into Amiga Forever, and we're going to try and load one of my other game files. So I've downloaded Elite, which is a great game, so do try it out. But I've downloaded that as a zip file, and Amiga Forever can actually handle zip files, but sometimes it looks as if it's not able to identify which game it's running, so it sort of goes to some sort of default state. So let's try loading that game in there and see what happens. So it's coming up here and it's loading it in as an Amiga 1200 on OS 3.1, and you can see here how it's set everything up. But if I try and actually run that game, let's see what happens. So it's obviously done something. We can hear the disk drive going, but obviously this is not working for us. So let's see how we can fix that. So I'm going to come out of the emulation and I'm going to stop that emulation. And we're going to try and load that game a second time. So we're going to come back in and we're going to go to Elite. So this time when it comes up, again, what we'll find is that different Amigas are better at running certain games. So again, sometimes you will have to look up the manual for the game to find out which Amiga it's particularly designed for, but I'd happen to know that this one here, so the Amiga 500 was sort of the gaming system. So if we go to an Amiga 500 here, you can see that resets all of our hardware and software values. So let's see if that will actually work for this. So all we've done here is just simply plug it into a different type of Amiga. And we're obviously now getting a much better result. Our game splash screen is coming up, and let's see if that actually goes as far as loading the game itself. And there we are into the actual game. So this particular game, Elite, you do need to go and download. So it says here we have the Space Traders Flight Training Manual. You do need to go and find that. It's very, very easy. Just search for it and a PDF will pop up. And again, it's asking us here for our sort of copyright protection to have a look through that booklet and find a particular word on a particular page. But at least we now have our game up and running. So initially then, of course, Amiga Forever was playing it using the wrong Amiga setup, and that's why using something like Amiga Forever just makes it a lot easier where we have all the preset machines already set up for us. So I simply go to one of the more gaming type machines, and here we have our game just popping up and running as expected. So that should then give you enough information to get any game that you happen to find and download, and that should let you then get that up and running inside your Amiga emulator, again with the help of this Amiga Forever. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please do click that like button and subscribe to the channel for more gaming, modding, emulation and making projects. I look forward to seeing you again very soon, and bye for now. For more games programming, electronics projects and retro gaming, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit my website.